Hello! I haven't done one of these for a little while. So this is the March wrap-up. I'm going to go about it. Normally I do it chronologically, but this time I'm going to do it from best to worst. So the best book of March for me was Roberto Bolaño's The Savage Detectives. This goddamn good, really. But it is a hard book. You need your wits about you. The beginning of the novel is the diary of a 17-year-old boy. However, the 17-year-old boy is obsessed with poetry, specifically Mexican poetry. So there are, let's say, an immoderate amount of name references to writers and poets that I have never heard of. I'm not a poetry expert. I'm not even a literature expert. I'm just a guy that likes to read books. But this is a genius novel. I think this is one of the great novels of the 20th century, and I highly recommend it. It is amazing. Silence. Shusaku Endo. I wouldn't say this novel is so much a Christian novel as more of an examination of faith. An examination of the author's faith is what it strongly feels like. For people who are of a religious disposition, God never answers your prayers. God is something you have faith in, but if you were ever to ask a question or a favor or please show me a sign, well, you know how God responds, with silence. And that is what the novel is about. It is a question of faith. The novel is completely brilliant. It's 300 pages. It's written in a very succinct style. I read that whole novel in 3 days. I just couldn't keep myself from reading it. It was too good to put it down. Novel number 3, in terms of enjoyment. The Unconsoled by Kazuo Ishiguro. It is something absurd, which I think is very frustrating for many people. A lot of people, I made a video of this one, and a lot of people said, yep, I couldn't finish it. It was too annoying. It was too frustrating. Yeah, I really get that. I do get it. But I liked it because it's not just absurd. Like if it verges too far into the absurd, then you can't read that because it's just too pointless to keep going along. Like it's ridiculous. It can be absurd, but it should not vary too far away from what keeps your interest or what you can continue to read about. I thought this one was quite good in that regard, that there is a man, apparently he is a famous pianist, world-renowned, and he comes to an unnamed European city, and he is just constantly being taken on these ridiculous little excursions. Even though it just seems that he has amnesia. I don't believe that the character has amnesia. Some people, that's the theory about the novel, that a man who has amnesia is being taken hither and thither. I don't think that's what it is in the novel at all. Some people say that it's an extended series of anxiety dreams, which I think is a little bit closer to what is really going on here. I enjoyed it. When I was a teenager, I liked Monty Python's Flying Circus. It's good, but I think for a lot of people, this is just not their cup of tea. Now we're into the negative ones. Iceberg Slim, Pimp. I did not enjoy this novel. I read this novel when I was a young man. It was fun to read about a way of life that is very distant from my own existence. This is the world of a man who is a pimp who, enslaves women to work for him. And I enjoyed reading about this very strange underground lifestyle. It's something I like about reading, is that it shows me how people live in different situations. I love novels about the Second World War because it helps me to appreciate something that happened long before I was born. Rereading this novel kind of sickens me. The whole novel is his desire to enslave women who are weak-willed or lost or drug addicts to work for him, having sex with strangers for money, which he keeps, to buy a very fancy wardrobe, to buy a new Cadillac every year, to live in a very expensive, gaudy flat. No, it wasn't a pleasure to read at all. Every single page of the novel, women are called bitches and whores. So if you have the stomach for that, I will say that the writing is good, but I think that it gets a lot of false praise because it's filled with this street gangster slang, which I believe makes people feel that it is more literary valuable than it truly is. Yeah, it's filled with gangster slang, but he's so vicious, like he has no compunctions whatsoever about beating, luring, drugging women to work for him. But then every couple of chapters, he's just crying like an absolute child about his poor mother. You know, when he was being sent to prison for the second time or the third time for being a pimp, you know, how she was weeping for him and he feels bad for his poor mother. It's like, well, like, you're a filthy scumbag. Like, don't give me all this false sentimentality about your mother. You know, like, you would have enslaved and brutalized her just as much as you would have done any of your other women in your, in your stable. So if you're curious about that world, here is a novel to read, but you'd better have a strong stomach to get through it. And the very gushing introduction by Irvine Welsh, the writer of Trainspotting, is really over the top. You know, Irvine Welsh is a fairly respected author, and he just, goddamn, I gave up reading the introduction halfway through because it was just, he's acting like Iceberg Slim is the next Faulkner. The worst book of March. I've gone back to university to study English literature, and I am resigned to reading books that I don't particularly want to read. Pilgrim's Progress, The Canterbury Tales, and I will have to read Little Women. One of the main reasons I've started this YouTube channel is because I think it is often people have the wrong impression about what literature really is. People think it is boring, it's stuffy, it's dry, it's dull, it's tedious to read, and it is not the case at all. Literature is far more exciting and compelling than anything in the cinema, anything on television. Something I think about, perhaps more often than I ought to, is how to make literature more interesting for young people, how to get them to want to read more and better books. A lot of the novels we read in high school kill any desire to read more than one has to. And I understand, because you can't give high school kids the really dirty stuff. It would be fun, wouldn't it, to go into a high school class of 17-year-olds and say, all right, let's read Tropic of Cancer. It's great. For one of my university classes, I had to read this novel called A Woman of Color by an unnamed anonymous author. This novel is about a young woman who is half black. Her father was a landowner in Jamaica. He had relations with one of his slaves, and this woman was born, and he loved her mother and he loved her. As a part of his will to inherit his great wealth, he insists that his daughter marries her cousin in Britain, because he feels that if she remains in Jamaica, her money will be stolen from her because she's daughter of a slave and a woman and partially black. On the surface, this novel is about racism and it is about female emancipation. Quite good. The story itself is great, and there are two big surprises towards the end. It is just that the writing, that old style, you know, those negative impressions people have about literature. It is dry, dull, stuffy, it is overwrought, it is melodramatic, it is tedious and a chore to read. Because everybody is making these declarations, you know, like they're on the stage, like, you know, oh, Imagine as you say that your soul is being pulled out from your teeth. Yes, cried I can do more than this if you will not unnerve my resolution by thus giving way to the excess of your feelings. Pray, I entreat you, rise, Mr. Fairfield. Fairfield, alas, said he, I will no longer bear that honoured name. I am unworthy to bear the name which belongs to you. Whatever name you bear, said I shall always consider you as friend. You shall always be regarded in my memory with esteem. Kill me not with such kindness, reproach, accuse, revile me, call me base destroyer of your fame. May heaven bless and preserve you. May peace revisit your bosom. May your heart never experience those pangs which are now piercing mine. Then, suddenly, lifting my hand to his heart, to his lips, and to his forehead, he let it fall on my lap and rushed out of the house. In that literature class, which I believe is 19th century feminism, feminist literature, I'm not criticizing the professor at all. Like, if you were going to teach a class called 19th century feminist literature, well, what can you do? How many novels do you really have? But we read Pride and Prejudice, which I was happy to read again. And we read Frankenstein, which I was extremely happy to read again because I enjoyed it thoroughly. And we read this, The Woman of Color, which in that class, it is a first-year class. I believe there are 4 students, me being one of them, who really care about literature and who are going to continue in, studying literature. And the other 16 students in the class are taking this to get 3 credits to fill out their university degree. And I feel that this can easily make them feel that they never want to read another novel for as long as they live. And I would not be surprised or even critical of those other students who say, yeah, I never want to read another book again. It is awful because of reading something like that. So what am I trying to say? I really have no idea. I just wish that teaching literature to people who are not already very much interested in literature, especially at university where you can teach the degenerate stuff. We didn't teach stuff like that because that is not a good example of what literature really is. Like, even compared to Pride and Prejudice and Frankenstein, like, that is way over the top. That's what I read in March, and yeah, there you go. There's the video. I gotta take the eggplant out of the oven, the potager, the aubergine, because it'll get too baked. Do you know how to make Baba Ganoush at home? It's so easy. Okay, like washing and chopping up the parsley, that's a bit of a pain in the ass, but okay. Thank you for watching. It's raining outside. I'm drinking beer, and I'm cooking a Baba Ganoush or Baba Ganoush. So the entire apartment smells very strongly of eggplant. For my British viewers, that is aubergine. For my Hungarian viewers, potager. Eggplant and garlic, roasting in the oven right now. God damn, it smells good. Delicious.